Thank you so much for joining me today, especially after lunch. So I hope you have a lot of coffee. My name is João, or João, or João, if you're not a native Portuguese speaker. I'm a lead engineer at Roche, and today I want to share with you how we scaled our analytics platform to over 80 countries in the last 4 or 5 years. Now, Roche is a big pharma company, one of the top 5 pharma companies according to revenue, based on figures from last year. We are present in over 100 countries. Our headquarters are in Basel, Switzerland, and that's what you see there. This is our campus in Basel. Quite beautiful, so you should visit. We are present with affiliates in over 100 countries. We have more than 100,000 employees, and we are on a mission to improve patients' lives across the world. Just last year, we were able to improve the quality of life of over 30 million families, and we want to keep growing. Now, as any pharmaceutical company, or most of the pharmaceutical companies, the value chain is quite complex. You start out by looking for new molecules to treat diseases, and once you find something that is promising, what you do next is you run a series of trials. You run these trials, and if the trials meet your primary endpoints, then you submit for approval from the regulatory authorities, which in the US is FDA, in Europe is EMA, and then if you have the green light, you then proceed to manufacturing, from manufacturing to distribution, until it reaches the healthcare organizations. And here we're talking about pharmacies, hospitals, clinics, where then healthcare practitioners, aka physicians, so our HCPs, prescribe the medicines to the patients. Now, my team's work is focused on the far right side of this spectrum, very close to the customer engagement. And when I talk about customer here, I'm not really talking about the patient, because the customer model in pharmaceutical companies is rather complex. It's not necessarily the patient who pays for the medicines. Sometimes it's the patient, sometimes it's a combination of patient and insurance company, sometimes the government also participates in buying the medicines. It really depends on the country and on the market. So when I'm talking about customer throughout my presentation, I'll actually be addressing the HCPs as our customers, because the HCPs, the physicians, are the ones that have the power to prescribe our medicines. As I said, we are pretty much in the go-to-market space, so we are very interested in understanding better our customer, right? And to understand our customer, we really need to harness data from both external sources as well as from internal sources. When we talk about internal sources, we are talking about our own CRM system, we're talking about our digital marketing campaign system, we're talking about our events management system, where we log the congresses on which we participate. We're talking about all these different systems that combined provide more insights into our customer. But we also need to look into data that lives outside of Roche. And here we need to understand if the physicians with whom we interact, if they are participating in clinical trials with other companies, on what diseases and with which purpose. If they are publishing scientific articles, in which magazines and about what and when. And also, because we are in 2024, we also need to understand how they interact in social media. So with all this information, we are then capable of answering common business cases in the commercial space, like customer segmentation and profiling, being able to provide content recommendation to our sales force so that they have more tailored conversations with the HCPs when they go out in the field, but also understanding what's our most important channels of communication in each case. Sometimes an email campaign is more effective, sometimes going through social media is more effective, sometimes a call is more effective, but being able to say this in real time, it requires harnessing all this data and combining this data to provide those insights to our field force. Now, obviously, because we are in the go-to-market, we are also interested in sales, obviously. So we do sales forecasting, and we do a lot of planning based on those forecastings. 5 years ago, when we started, the analytics landscape in the commercial domain of Roche was rather heterogeneous, to say the least. We had multiple different teams spread across the world, each of them using different technologies to provide analytics insights to the business. We have some teams that were using Oracle databases, using Informatica pipelines, or using Talent pipelines, teams using drag and drop tools, and teams using Spark scripts on top of Hadoop clusters to create the very same insights. It was very heterogeneous, and it's very hard to build analytics with such a different, in such a different ecosystem on the very same domain of data. This made it very difficult to have a single source of truth. Asking questions like, how many customers, active customers do we have that are specialized on oncology, which seems like a very simple question, became very difficult to solve because we had the response spread out across multiple different sources. Each country had their own version of truth. Each country had their own version of business requirements. Therefore, it was not simple to come up with answers to these simple questions. On top of that, even the way we negotiated buying and purchasing data from vendors was distributed. Because Roche is highly decentralized, each affiliate was able to go ahead and purchase the very same data set from the same vendor. Beyond purchasing the very same data set and not benefiting from economies of scale, we were ingesting the very same data set using many different technologies. Therefore, duplicating the work of ingesting data. And finally, because every country was working in the very same common domain, which is commercial, everyone was trying to answer the very same questions. Everyone wants to have a customer 360 view of the customer. Everyone wants to do content recommendation for the field force, but everyone does it separately. So we were reinventing the wheel over and over again using different technologies. It became very obvious for us that solving this big problem wouldn't cut it just by looking at technology. We had to look at things holistically. We had to look at people, processes, and technology. And starting with people, which is the most important thing, because everything we do is to actually help improve the lives of people. How do we go from these disconnected, siloed teams into a single, unified team that works together towards the same goal? How do we go about going from local, centralized thinking into thinking about global needs? Instead of thinking that I'm going to build this dashboard for my country, how do I go about thinking, is there any dashboard already live that I can reuse in my own affiliate? And if I need to augment it, how can I do it in such a way that it is reusable across the other affiliates? Technology. We had multiple different technologies, and it was clear that we needed a more standardized approach and a more modern approach. But how do we scale in such a heterogeneous ecosystem where we had different teams with different degrees of maturity when it comes to technology? We had engineers that were used to using drag and drop tools. And then we had engineers that were used to using PySpark code. How can we go about and cater for both kinds of engineers? Finally, from a process standpoint, we had teams that were working in waterfall mode, other teams working in sprints of 1 week, sprints of 3 weeks, everyone completely disconnected. But one thing was common, almost no one was doing DevOps. Everyone was developing. I develop my code, I develop my pipelines, and then I throw it over the fence. I do 2 weeks QT to another team, and that other team handles all the operation problems. How did we solve the problem starting with people? The first thing we did was we came up with a set of capabilities that made up, with which we created a common language for everyone. Because different teams had different roles, many times the same role with different names, we had to come up with a common naming convention for the capabilities. And the naming convention that we used strictly followed the natural process of any data pipeline project. First, we have the data analysts, who are capable of translating the business requirements into actionable SQL statements. Then we have the data engineers, whose sole responsibility in our project is to ingest data into our platform. They don't do any data transformation. Then we have the analytics engineers who do all the magic. They transform the data based on the inputs provided by the data analysts. Then, of course, we have visual analytics engineers who build beautiful dashboards and visuals on top of the data that has been curated by the analytics engineers. We have machine learning engineers who build machine learning pipelines on top of the curated data, and then we have cloud engineers who build the whole cloud infrastructure as code. At the same time, beyond the capabilities, we have another vertical. We have this matrix topology, where every single engineer, as part of our organization, belongs at the very same time to a capability and to a product work stream. And that product work stream can be an affiliate product work stream, or it can be a global product work stream. When it's a global product workstream, the only difference is that you're catering to the entire globe. When you're deploying for everyone. When you're affiliate specific, you're deploying a data product for a specific affiliate. Why did we go with this? Because this way, we are balancing out the need to deliver fast without compromising in quality. The capabilities are setting out the standards for every engineer in the organization. And at the same time, the work streams are guaranteeing that we still deliver the value that the business requires. Process. As I said, when we started, the landscape was very different. We didn't have, DevOps was a far-fetched concept. So we wanted really to establish DevOps. But to establish DevOps, we had to do everything as code. Because when you do everything as code, everything is versioned, everything is checked into a repo. You can finally do CI/CD, and your releases are much more predictable. We do releases every 2 weeks, and we don't with zero human touch. Everything is done via CI/CD. It also allows us to put in place a lot of code quality standards via pre-commit hooks, via blueprints that we use when we start building new data models. Agility. We had different teams, again, some of them working still in waterfall, delivering every 6 months. Every single team within our organization works in the very same sprint cycle of 2 weeks. All the tech leads participate in the very same sprint planning meetings, in the very same stand-ups, and in the very same sprint reviews and retrospectives. What does this allow us? It allows us to be completely aligned. It allows us to stop whenever someone is trying to start building something that has been built before in some other geography. We now have full visibility on what's going on at every single point in time. Finally, project management. We also changed a bit the status quo here. We used to have teams working with Jira, some other teams using Google Docs for project management, some others using Trello, Google Sheets, you name it. Confluence, we could go on and on. Everyone had the reason to use their own tool. And with us, what we said is we're going to unify everything. We use only one tool. And the tool that we use is GitLab. In GitLab, we have all our code, we have all our tickets, and we have all our documentation. This means that if at any given point in time, if an engineer in Canada is interested in knowing what's going on in Brazil, they just open the very same GitLab instance and they see it. It's very clear for everyone and it's very transparent. Finally, we didn't stop there. We set up a unified channel of communication in Slack. Whereas before different teams had their own Google chats, we put everyone in Slack. And this was major because now I finally have my engineers that have built exposures on dbt in Canada explaining everyone else how to do it properly. I wake up in the morning and I have messages from Kuala Lumpur, and then I have people in France solving the very same questions. And this is massive because it builds a sense of belonging and it builds a sense of community. Technology, the least important thing in the whole equation. So we came up with a modern data stack approach. We came up with a new platform, fully cloud native. We chose AWS as our preferred cloud. We do everything, and if you look at the services that we have here, the large majority of them are either serverless or managed, because we really don't want to manage infrastructure if the cloud can provide that for us. From an ingestion standpoint, we use Glue, Lambda, AWS Transfer Family, and AppFlow. All the data that is ingested by a centralized data engineering team. This way, we avoid having multiple teams ingesting the very same data. The ingestion is done by the data engineering capability. We then stage this data in S3. We govern the data access with lake formation, and we expose the data using the Glue data catalog. The exposed raw data is then exposed to Redshift, and Redshift is really where the magic happens because we use dbt to transform all the raw data that is visible from S3 directly on Redshift. From a data consumption standpoint, we have Tableau as our dashboarding tool, we use ThoughtSpot as our self-service BI tool, and we use Kubeflow to build machine learning pipelines at scale. Obviously, there are many more services that we use. We also use OpenSearch, which I might mention a bit later. But obviously, I mean, for the purpose of the presentation, this is our architecture. I would like to double click a bit on our data architecture and the way we orchestrate or organize things within our Redshift cluster. We have two main databases. The first one is the sources, where we expose all the raw data that we have ingested into S3. And then we have a global or curated database where all the global data products live. Among all these global data products, there's a very special one, which is a global data product that we coined with source data product or series of source data products, and basically is everything that is used across the entire organization. When you think about the dimension customer, it's built once and it's built in this layer. If you think about the dimension healthcare organization, it's built once and in this layer. So likewise, fact tables that track the interactions of our field force with the healthcare practitioners, everything is captured in this very same layer. And we model this layer after data vault. That's why you see a raw data vault there, business data vault, and then an information mart, which is a relational mart, which we are calling source data products. These source data products are then used and reused by all the global data products. And they are also used by the affiliate data products. Now, each and every affiliate that is live on our platform has their own database. And they have the capacity to feed from the source data products and at the same time feed from specific sources that are local specific. Now, obviously, the data that comes from the source data products into these country-specific databases is filtered for the country. So they don't have access to all the countries. That's reserved for the global data products. You'll also notice here in the slide that we have an hybrid approach when it comes to DBT. You'll see that we have DBT Core for our global products and we have DBT Cloud for our affiliate products. And there's a good reason for that. When we started 5 years ago, we started with global data products. And the team that was behind building those global data products was quite mature when it comes to technology. DevOps, CI/CD were concepts that were second nature already for these developers. So for them, it was very natural to use a tool on their VS Code that could easily build, on which they could easily build the data pipelines. But then, if you remember, we had a very heterogeneous landscape across the globe. We had users that were used to doing drag and drop ETL. So we really had to come up with a solution that was easy and that would lower the entry barrier to these teams. And that's where DBT Cloud came in very handy. Every time we wanted to deploy something, we wanted to deploy a new affiliate, we just had to deploy our new project using Terraform in DBT Cloud. We would go to them, the data is already available because we made it available in the sources, and in the span of weeks, they could already migrate their dashboards into our new platform and leave their legacy platforms. Was it worth it? Why did we came this long way to do all this, establishing new processes, capturing new team topologies, and putting in place a brand new technology stack? Because now we are finally able to link our internal data of our customers with external data. Yes, one could argue that before this was already possible. It was possible, but in siloed ways. It was not scalable. And finally, we are able to map our customers to external sources, to social media, to clinical trial databases, to scientific publication databases. And as of today, I can proudly say that we were able to map 40% of our customer base to investigators in a private clinical trial database. And again, why is it so important? Because finally we are able to do this at scale. We are finally able to do customer profiling at scale, to have a true customer 360 vision of our customers. We now know how many emails were sent to Dr. John. How many of those emails did he open? How many times did Dr. John interact in social media? How many times did Dr. John publish in the last month? Is he a trendsetter? Is he a rising star in the oncology setting? All this information is crucial for our Salesforce teams. Now, obviously, beyond being able to show this information, we are finally able to build content recommendation systems that give you these insights directly to the Salesforce. They don't need to necessarily to open these dashboards. They receive the recommendations directly in their CRM system. And finally, because we are in 2024, I could not build a presentation without mentioning genAI. But I must say it's a bit clickbait, just to have more people in the room. Because we have centralized everything and we finally harmonized everything, we are able to also use this information to better support, again, the work of our field force and our medical liaisons. And why is it important? Imagine that you're a field force and you're about to go and visit a doctor. What do you do to prepare your visit? Now we are able to summarize all the interactions that we had in the past with that doctor, and we can even chat a bit with the application to get deeper insights and ask more questions about what's more interesting to discuss with the doctor. This is where we see the power of genAI. It's not so much to replace everything we've done. It's more in the sense of augmenting. But it would be impossible to be here if we hadn't spent so much time building the foundations from people, processes, and technology standpoints. We don't know always what's the best genAI and how can genAI improve our relationship with our customers and how can it improve our understanding of our customers. But one thing we know that the best way to achieve better results is to democratize the access to these technologies. We know that by putting genAI in the hands of the analytics engineers who are much closer to the business than we are, we might be unlocking value streams that we have never thought before. One of those examples is the one I'm showing now. We have deployed a Lambda UDF on top of our Redshift cluster. Basically, a Lambda UDF works pretty much like just any function in Redshift, like a max, average. It just so happens that behind the scenes, it triggers a Lambda function. And this Lambda function, in turn, is invoking a Bedrock API. So what this Lambda function receives as arguments is two things, a prompt and a column value. And now we can ask stuff based on the values that we have, based on the free text that we have in our tables. A clear example of that is what one of our engineers came up with to solve the problem of adverse event reporting or product complaint reporting. Product complaint reporting is something that is mandatory in pharmaceutical companies. Whenever someone reports in one of our channels that there was a product complaint or an adverse event, we are obliged to report this to authorities. Now, to do this at scale, it's very cumbersome. And genAI can help us solve this problem. We're now sending, using Redshift, to query Bedrock and passing it a question, just like, does this free text contain any product complaint? And then we pass the column value. And we retrieve back two columns, a Boolean, yes or no, and the description column with the reasoning behind why the LLM model decided it was or not a product complaint. The beauty of this is that SQL is the language of DBT. So we can now embed this in our incremental models every day, and we can run this at scale. Where are we today? We are live in over 80 countries after 4 or 5 years. We have more than 1,000 users across many different applications that we have live. We are refreshing more than 3,000 data sets every day, and we achieved a cost saving of approximately 70%. How did we come to this number? Well, we decommissioned 4 different platforms, and everyone is now using the very same platform. We decommissioned Oracle databases, SQL servers, Informatica licenses, Talent licenses, you name it. But we don't stop here. Where are we heading next? A peek into our crystal ball. I said in the beginning that my team is focused on the far right side of the spectrum, in the value chain. So we are very close to customer engagement. But we want to move across, we want to expand to other areas of the value chain. We want to be able to provide insights into early stage, into product development. And likewise, we want to feed the insights from these domains into our own domain. This is only possible when we start thinking about data mesh, when we start thinking about what is possible in DBT that provides us these data mesh capabilities. Now, that's the reason why we are considering, as of today, moving some of our global core projects, especially the one that I showed with the Data Vault and source data products, into the cloud. Because this will unlock us the possibility of doing data mesh on those core products. At the same time, recently, dbt announced the new connections API. As of today, we still have 2 dbt cloud projects per country. We have a UAT and a production one. We just want to have one. We don't want to manage so many projects. Instead of 80 projects, we have 160. With this new API, we are finally able to have, in the very same product or project, dbt cloud project, we can have connections to both our UAT cluster and our production cluster. What's also interesting for us, and we are pushing quite a bit dbt in this direction, is to have the possibility to connect via SSO from dbt cloud into Redshift. We don't want to be passing around credentials anymore. And finally, we look forward to leveraging more and more the metadata layer that is made available in dbt cloud. And the reason why we want to do it is because we see a tremendous opportunity to improve our own operations. We run thousands of models every day, but we don't have thousands of engineers. So it's very important for us to understand what are the most critical models that we need to cater for. Because things go wrong every day. Every day, everyone receives messages in Slack that something is down. But we need to know what's more important. And what's more important is often the model that has more downstream applications, but also the model that gets the most consumed. So these are the things that we're looking pretty much forward to adopting in the near future. Thank you so much. I don't know if I have time, maybe a couple of questions if you have. There's a mic. I think there's a microphone. Yeah.
I could also just say it loudly.
No, I think it's important the mic because this is being recorded.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Yeah, thanks so much for presenting. You had on your slide for transformations just DBT. We do a lot of modeling for predictive analytics, but we don't do that with DBT. We do machine learning in Databricks. I'm curious, how do you do that in your production pipeline? Do you kick the tables out to a machine learning platform and then bring it back into DBT for transformations for production?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, might be an overstatement that we do everything with DBT. So, so we curate everything with DBT and prepare everything for machine learning with DBT. And then we have Kubeflow pipelines that pick up the data, do whatever wrangling that needs to be done, do the inference, and spit it out again to Redshift. So this component is not necessarily with DBT, but we use DBT to prepare the data for machine learning.
I'm curious, your experience on the genAI side, we have a lot more maturity around managing like schema data than free text and schemaless data. Are you seeing a lot of like genAI use cases for that highly structured data that we're more like traditionally comfortable working with, or is it mostly working with plain language?
For us, we see value. There are multiple value streams when it comes to genAI. For us, right now, we are really focusing on free text data, so unstructured data. At the same time, we see a lot of potential in using genAI for free text querying, right? You go to ThoughtSpot and you use natural language to ask questions. And then this gets translated into structured SQL queries. So these are the two lines of value that we see, but mostly when it comes to the use case that I just explained is on top of unstructured data. Now, it's important to note that there are some challenges when it comes to that specific application. We need to enable a hybrid search. So it's not only about free text querying. It's not only semantic. It's both semantic and indexed searching. So it's quite complex when we take things into production. But yeah.
I have a question. First of all, inspiring stuff and seeing you guys doing it at scale. Really inspiring. I was wondering, the data analysts and the data and visualization engineers, I'm guessing like in a lot of other teams, they come up with some transformations on their own, kind of that last mile transformation. What is the process, or how do you go about taking whatever gets built there and preventing it from becoming its own silo or deciding which pieces merit kind of taking it into the transformation layer and away from the BI layer?
This is a very, very good question. We cannot control everything, obviously. And at some point, there are some transformations that happen ultimately in the visualization layer. What we can do is stay very, very much connected. And this ensures that it can start as a transformation in the last mile, but then we pull it back to DBT. This is what's very important for us. At the same time, we've been also exploring the semantic layer. We're not using it live yet. We've been experimenting because we believe that semantic layer will solve some of those problems. It will unify what we consider that are global metrics and whatnot. Yeah. Two more questions.
I can see from your diagram that at some point, well, even currently, you have two environments, one for DBT core and one for DBT cloud. Can you discuss some of the challenges with managing both of this infrastructure? And I also see now you are transitioning from DBT core to DBT cloud completely, and how's that been?
Not completely. Okay. Some of our global data products, we might move them to the cloud. We discussed this extensively. We had many, many different discussions. DBT core is amazing, but we need to manage a lot to have DBT core. All the state management is taken care for you when you go into DBT cloud. If you're not in DBT cloud, you need to do it yourself. And this poses a lot of burden into our teams. So this is clearly one aspect that for us poses a good, makes a good case to move to DBT cloud. At the same time, there are still some details that we need to carve out before we move everything to DBT cloud. Namely, the entire development lifecycle will change, and we want to ensure that we minimize that impact on our core teams. Okay, so we are taking all these things into consideration and also discussing them with DBT labs. Maybe final question, because I'm nervous if someone asks a question I don't know how to answer.
Thank you for a very precise presentation. And I wanted to ask about, you mentioned the agile part of having all the data teams having their sprint plannings. Was that so data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers, do they have sprint plannings together, or is it separate teams and then they come together and?
Yeah, so it's a good point. So we have each work stream data product has its own independent roadmap and its own independent sprint planning. But then the tech leads of all those work streams come together into a common sprint planning, and they share what are their goals for the next sprint. And things can change within this sprint planning and within this general sprint planning, because if we spot that someone is trying to start something that has already been done, we stop it immediately. Now, it means that the teams are independent to a certain degree, but they are part of a much larger team to another degree. Then the capabilities themselves, do they reunite together? Because you have analytics engineers spread across different work streams, but then they come together as well. Every year we do two workshops in Poland. In those workshops, we split teams by capabilities, and we set standards. We have dedicated sessions so that each capability defines what are the ways of working for that capability. This way, we align that we have the best practices in place for all the work streams. Obviously, we have other occasions throughout the year where the capabilities meet, but this is mostly how it works out. Great.